Welcome back to Real Shift, where we like to talk real shit all day, every day, all for the love of movies. I am Joe. Before I get into it today, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Any little bit of feedback or support would be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. And today, this one is kind of a special one for me. It's not a movie that I've never seen before. Obviously, this is a movie that I've seen extensively, but I just wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about why I love it. I'm going to do a review and just kind of go through what makes it so great in my personal opinion. But the reason I chose this particular movie today is actually on the day I'm recording this, it marks the 1-year anniversary that my uncle passed away. And that to me is why I felt the need to come on here and talk about the Road Warrior specifically, is because the first time I ever saw the Road Warrior was with him. And it was when I was young, very young, probably too young. But my parents and uncles and aunts didn't really censor me from anything when I was younger. And I appreciate that they didn't do that, to be honest, because I wouldn't be as knowledgeable about movies as I am now. But with him particularly, when I would spend time with him, we would stay up late and we'd watch movies, and frequently that is where I would see movies for the first time, and The Road Warrior was one of them. And it's one of those memories. I was very young, but it's one of those memories that is pretty vivid in my mind. So it obviously made a huge impact on me even as a young kid. And now to this day, I still love it with every fiber in my body. Like, it's one of my favorite movies for sure. But this particular review is obviously going to be dedicated to him. I miss him very much, and I'm doing this for him today. And I just want to let everyone out there know that if you have anyone in your life that you need to tell you love them, make sure you do it while they're still here. Don't wait. Make that connection again, even if it's been a long time since you've seen them. You don't want any regrets, because not everyone's going to be here forever. So take the time to reach out to that person, tell them how you feel, tell them how much you appreciate them, and yeah, show them love while they're here. That's basically my philosophy on this particular topic. So moving on from that, let's get right into the review. This is, of course, a review / discussion, whatever you want to call it, of The Road Warrior, also known as Mad Max 2, depending on where you saw it for the first time, what country you were in. It was actually marketed as The Road Warrior here in the United States because not a lot of people knew about the original Mad Max prior to this movie coming out in the United States, so they felt like to avoid confusion they would just release it under a different name, and that's why it has the name The Road Warrior. I like it when sequels have different names, completely different names than the original. It doesn't happen very often, but I think it's cool when they do that for some reason. It's unique. One of the main ones I can think of right now is obviously Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and I don't know if Christopher Nolan was paying homage to George Miller in that aspect, but I just think it's really cool when they do that, and it kind of just makes each individual part, even though it's part of a trilogy, it makes each part kind of feel like its own thing, and I think that's kind of cool. So moving right on, I think this is one of the most influential films of all time, and I'm hard-pressed to find many other movies that I think have had a bigger impact on other movies. Like, I think a lot of things in this movie have been replicated or attempted to be replicated or paid homage to throughout the course of history with movies. And I think this movie influenced a lot of filmmakers. And you can kind of see why. You can see the almost simplistic nature that they attempted to make this movie in, but they did it in a way that made it look even bigger than it actually is. And I'll get into what I actually mean by that as I go on. But as far as the movie itself, it opens with an intro basically explaining the world in which Mad Max takes place. Because again, if you hadn't seen the first movie, you wouldn't understand really. And even if you had seen the first movie, there is a bit of a jump in time, because it goes from this post-apocalyptic era in Mad Max, and then by the time The Road Warrior happens, it's completely post-apocalyptic. So I think both people that have seen Mad Max and people that haven't, this little summary in the beginning is definitely beneficial to both of them, and I think that's kind of cool how they did that, and they kind of just bring everyone together and make sure everyone's on the same page. But it explains the world, it explains who Max is, it explains everything that he went through in the first film and why he would be the way he is now, and that's all important. It's very hard to care about a character if you don't necessarily know them, and the way Max is portrayed in this particular film, it would be very hard for anyone to get any kind of solid information about him, about his past. So they chose to do it in this intro, and I think it works really well for this movie. They give you kind of... Actually, I want to point out too that I'm not sure if this is accurate, and somebody in the comments can tell me if this is true or not, but I think this might have been the origin of the whole lone wanderer and having a dog in the Apocalypse story that's been used quite frequently. I mean, I know it's been used in Fallout in the video game series. I know it's been used in The Walking Dead. That seems to be one of those things now that has become commonplace in the Apocalypse. I Am Legend is another one, where the lone wanderer, the guy who's by himself, all he has is his dog. So I'm wondering if this was like the start of that, and I'm pretty sure that it was. I can't think of another movie prior to this where that was the case, but if there is one, please let me know in the comments down below. This movie doesn't waste any time. It drops you right into it, and I really like that about it. Like, from the moment the intro is over and you see Max in the car riding down the road, it's just, you get the feeling that this is like an everyday occurrence for them. Like, this is life in the wasteland. It's constantly a chase. You're constantly running from something or running towards something or whatever the case may be, and you really get that sense by them opening up with a car chase, basically. And it also beats home the importance of oil, which is a very important it's a very important thing in this whole universe. Through the course of all the movies, oil has a major impact on the events of the film. So it kind of paints a picture for you just right off the bat. The costume design in this movie, I think, is very influential. I mean, when you think post-apocalyptic, you think about what's in Mad Max. You think about the assless chaps. You think about the football pads, the mohawks. All of that comes from this movie. Many other movies and many other directors and writers have tried to replicate this, but they've never really been able to, I don't think. I think the best I've seen is probably from Fallout, to be honest, paying homage to it, because they pay homage to it while not directly ripping it off, I feel like, even though there is very clear moments that are torn right from Mad Max. But this whole costume design, the world that he created, is just so influential on other movies, and you can't have a post-apocalyptic movie now that's not going to be judged against Mad Max in this universe. So I think it's really cool how he basically invented the way people dress in the apocalypse. Like, that's something that George Miller invented, and I think that's really cool. And it's hard to argue with that kind of influence because, again, you can't think of this type of clothing without thinking of Mad Max or without thinking the apocalypse. Like, they go hand in hand. So it's often imitated but never duplicated, I will say that. So moving on from the actual costume design, Max himself is basically this classic archetype of the classic Western, where you would have this lone wanderer who doesn't say much. He just kind of wanders from place to place, doesn't really have a purpose. He's just kind of antisocial and avoiding people, but he always gets sucked into these situations that he doesn't necessarily want to be a part of, but he kind of has no choice once he's involved in it. And all of that is like classic in most Westerns. And what Mel Gibson and George Miller were able to do with the character of Max, because he's basically an anti-hero. Like, he doesn't want to be bothered. He doesn't want to be involved in any of this nonsense. So he's kind of forced into it. And even when he does, like, he's still trying to find ways out of it. So he's not your typical hero. He's just kind of thrust into a situation that he has to deal with, and he doesn't really want to. But he's a flawed character, but you also find yourself pulling for him, and that's not easy to do. That's not easy to make you like someone who really doesn't care about anyone else, but they managed to do it here. And I give all the credit to how Mel Gibson portrayed him and how George Miller wrote him, but that is just something that I think is really important about the movie as well. I mentioned the Western archetype of basically people wandering from place to place. That is heavy in this movie. I mean, it's the whole premise of the movie. Like, this could have been a Man with No Name movie if it was set in Western times. Like, it literally could have been the same plot. In fact, it's very close to a plot of one of the Man with No Name movies. So, this movie is basically about Max, who has lost his humanity. He's cut himself off from people after the events of the first film, and just what's going on in the world, and he sees how people are and all the gangs and everything like that. Everything he's had to deal with has just made him cold to the world. It's made him cold to people. He doesn't care for people anymore. And yeah, he's lost his humanity a little bit, and he slowly starts to regain it throughout the course of this movie. And I think that's a very human story and something that everyone can definitely relate to, especially during quarantine. I mean, once we escape from quarantine, whenever that is, or when we're finally finished with everything, we're going to have to kind of reconnect with people and kind of get on with our everyday lives again, and just find that old person that we used to be that is able to interact with people more, like we're going to have to do at some point. So I think that's just kind of really cool, and it kind of, again, it's relevant to the current times we're in right now. So we have all these classic ideas, and you would think that would make the movie boring or just generic or whatever the case may be. But the thing that's beautiful about this movie is they take all these classic ideas and they plop it into this sprawling world that George Miller has created. And to be quite honest, I don't think George Miller gets enough credit. Like, I think he should be on the level with George Lucas as far as world building goes. I realize it's not as maybe as intricate and in-depth as Star Wars is, but there is a lot of detail that he went into, and there's a lot of thought into the world that he created. And to be quite honest, not many filmmakers are doing this type of thing anymore, where they create these worlds and they just create everything from scratch. Like, they're not going off of any kind of other mediums or any kind of other material or pulling from books or anything like that. Like, this is all just how he viewed this world in his head, and he brought it to us. And that level of genius, in my opinion, deserves to be recognized and deserves that kind of praise that we give people like George Lucas. I believe George Miller deserves that same type of praise. The world he creates is just so unique. It's so compelling. It's so beautifully primal. Like, it's just, you can't help but get wrapped up in it, to be quite honest. Like, it's just visually stunning too. Like, that's another aspect of it. And that continues in the later films, of course, even into Fury Road. It gets even more visually stunning because of the technological advances with cameras and stuff like that. But the visuals that this man is able to create are just something special, and not many directors are able to pull off the same thing, for sure. Great filmmakers, in my opinion, do more with less, and this movie is a clear example of that. He does the most with the least amount. I mean, it's essentially one location. It's a secluded area. It's all desert. In most movies, it would seem pretty boring, to be quite honest. There's not a lot going on as far as backgrounds and stuff like that go, but the cinematography and the way he shoots things, it makes the world feel so much bigger. And I noticed that a lot this time, especially with like the wide shots that he shows of like Max up on the top of the cliff looking down at the city as the bandits are all like circling the little settlement with the oil in it. Like, it just makes the world feel so much better by the way he shoots it. Or so much bigger, I should say. They make it feel like so much more than it actually is. Again, he's doing more with less. And that brings me to the action sequences too, like the car chase, specifically the car chase at the end of the movie, where it's like, it goes on for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, whatever the case may be. But it had to be difficult to shoot in 1981, to be quite honest. It'd probably be difficult to shoot now. But the effects and because everything was done in front of the camera and it's done all practically with stunts and everything like that, it's aged so well. Like, everything holds up in this movie, especially the action sequences, like more than you think it would. And that's really, again, a test to his abilities as a director and as a creator and just what he's able to do. I also have to mention the classic cast of characters before I stop here. It's the feral boy, obviously, is one of those characters. The gyro captain, Lord Humongous, just an iconic look and design and just the whole way that he was created. And of course, Wes, who was played by Vernon Wells, who is a bit of a, let's say, off-kiltered character. He's a little bit weird. He's the one with the assless chaps, and they got him on a leash, and like they hold him back and they cut him loose like a dog sometimes, and He rides around with some dude with long blonde hair on the back of him, and it's a very weird character. Like, if I was going to ask George Miller about any character in this movie, it would be about him. Like, where did you come up with the idea for Wes? Like, where did you pull inspiration for Wes from? Or is this all just straight from your head? Because he is a very, very strange character. And another interesting aspect is they kind of like, in most movies, you would have a confrontation between Wes and Max, like a hand-to-hand confrontation. But in this particular movie is unique in a sense that their confrontation is during the car chase as Max is driving. So it's not your typical just hand-to-hand combat way you would typically finish off an action movie. And I can really appreciate that as well, just the difference, the way they took a different approach to the climax of the movie. Okay, so I believe obviously that this movie was a game changer for action movies when it was released. I find it just as entertaining today as I did the first day I watched it with my uncle all those years ago. I'm really thankful that he showed me this movie at such a young age, because I feel like a lot of people who are older now, or even like in their 20s, say, might not be able to get into something like Mad Max if they saw it for the first time now, because they're so prone to seeing how things are done in modern Hollywood. So I'm really thankful that I was able to see these movies back in the day before, and they introduced them to me at a young age, and that helped me to appreciate them even more now, because now I appreciate stuff like that so much more, and like I see the quality that was there back in the day that's not there now. Like, yes, everything is fancier and shinier now, but the charm and the effort and the quality is diminishing from what we got, say, back in 1981 or anything prior to that. So I'm just really thankful that my family didn't really shelter me from things like that, and they just let me watch pretty much anything, because that pretty much made me into the movie fan I am today. So again, I'm going to thank my uncle for being the first to introduce this masterpiece to me, and that's what I think it is. I think it is a masterpiece. It's much appreciated. I will be forever thankful that he showed me this. And of course, again, this review is dedicated to him. I miss him very much, and yes, I'm just thankful that he showed me this movie. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments down below. How do you feel about Road Warrior? I'd love to have a discussion down below. I think it's one of the best movies ever made, to be quite honest, especially best action movies ever made. That's just my personal opinion. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it already. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Bro Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.